All right, everyone, welcome back to Stories from a Mountain Town. This is your host, Tyler Meany, coming to you from Jackson, Wyoming, as normal. And today with us, we have my girlfriend, Taylor Weiss. Taylor, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
As we always do, we had the guest pick a cocktail of their choosing to bring, and we pretty much always have this at the house. Taylor's drink of choice is Kendall Jackson Chardonnay.
It's a Saddle Butte staple, one of my favorites.
Yeah, Vintner's Reserve. It's a 2017. So we'll pour this out. I already opened it before we started.
Glug, glug, glug.
Just one small glass.
What?
I'm joking. Cheers, honey. All right. Now that we have business taken care of, I'll show this to the camera. Kendall Jackson. If anybody from Kendall Jackson is listening, would love some bottles of wine. We went to your tasting room in Santa Rosa when we were in California recently, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we'd be real good sponsors for KJ because we pretty much have this on hand at all times and can take some damn good pictures at the top of the butte with the sunset.
Yeah.
Wine and cheese.
Yeah, that one that you took in the beginning, more the beginning of the summer with the wine and cheese board and the Tetons and the sun setting. How they didn't post that to their Instagram is beyond me, because they would pay thousands of dollars for a picture like that, and you just sent it to them.
I think there was another bottle of wine in it, wasn't there? That might have been the reason.
I don't think so. I think it was just Kendall. I think we did it on purpose, specifically that way.
Shoot.
Tell the listeners why you started drinking this wine.
Well, I used to drink like any bottle under $10, and then when Tyler and I started dating, his stepmom Leanne introduced me to the finer wines, the $20 bottles of wine.
It's not that expensive in Minnesota.
Oh, it's like $12 in Minnesota, but out here it's $25. But then I weaseled my way into the next higher level of Chardonnays, so here we are.
Yeah, I was getting rattled by her consistently drinking like Barefoot Moscatos.
Okay, I did not drink like Barefoot Moscatos.
$2 bottles of wine.
It was at least like Yellowtail.
Okay, you're gonna have a real wine, and so we tried this, and I've drank plenty of it throughout my time living with Leanne. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep it. Pretty good.
So we are here in Jackson, Wyoming, like we always are. And Taylor, I finally convinced Taylor to move here in March with me. Could you tell listeners a little bit about like the process from your perspective in for us to work everything out to move here, whether that's getting your job or the housing or all that stuff, just from your perspective?
So I never thought we were actually going to move here. I thought this was just an idea in Tyler's head, and I'd like play along with it for a while, and eventually it would go away. But that was not the case. So
not the case.
I was trying to like ease us into like something a little in between Jackson and Minnesota, like Colorado, something a little more accessible, easier to fly to, a larger city with bigger hospitals. So I was kind of just trying to steer him that direction, and he was just Jackson or bust, and there was no other option. So I applied to probably like 5 or 6 other hospitals, did some interviews in Idaho and Colorado, and then I'd be all pumped up that they wanted another interview, and Tyler just didn't seem like he was into it at all. So eventually just started looking for jobs in Wyoming, which are not an easy thing to find out here. If you know what you want to do and you're not willing to do something else, it's a little bit tricky to find a job. So I'm sure if you guys listened to the first episode of this podcast, you heard about how I how I with what are these things called?
Air quotes.
Air quotes. I with air quotes sent an email to the hiring manager, HR, for a job at the hospital in Jackson, but it all worked out, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Here we are, a year
And
later.
Now, tell them about where you work and like what you do and what that's like.
Yeah. So I, at the hospital I worked at in Minnesota, worked in a pretty big facility that did probably like 250 to 400 births a month. So that's like what? I can't do the math, but how many babies a day?
A lot.
A lot of babies a day. And then when I was looking at the hospital out here, it's a different setup. So it's called an LDRP. So they do labors, deliveries, recoveries, postpartums, and nursery babies. Whereas when I worked in Minnesota, I just did labors. So it's been quite the change to go from that to this. It's the same job, but it's a whole new skill set, and it's entirely different working in a rural community where your doctors aren't in a house and it takes 20 minutes for anesthesia to get to the bedside. So it's taken a lot of adjusting, and my big reason for not wanting to move out here for so long was because I wasn't willing to give up a job where the doctors were there whenever I needed them, and my patients could get an epidural in 5 minutes. Like, I didn't really want to give that up, and kind of when I applied to it and learned more about it, I was still super skeptical about it, but then just was kind of like, well, there's a billion other people that do this job in a hospital that's not like the one that I'm at, and apparently it works out just fine for them, so it should work out for me. So now I've been here for 8 months, and it's definitely taken a ton of adjusting to get comfortable with working in a smaller community, but loving it, and I think it's really good to have a skill set at both a like large and small hospital. It just makes you a more well-rounded, better nurse in general.
Yeah, the community of Jackson, I've said this before, but the community loves its locals, but they really, really love the types of people the people that have the careers that are like teachers, nurses, doctors, policemen, firemen, and it's like everywhere we go. You ask what you do here in town, and she says she's a labor and delivery nurse, and people are just like so pumped up that you just came here to do that because they recognize that it's hard to do that here, and the community needs it if it wants to sustain itself. And yeah, so it's like Taylor is automatically at everyone's good graces when she says what she does to new people that we meet.
Unless they've seen me at the Silver Dollar on a Friday or Saturday. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really nice. It's super strange to be in a place where you're like recognized at a grocery store. I guess, I don't know. Working in St. Paul, I never ever saw a patient that I've taken care of ever. And then coming here, it's like I've probably had like at least 10 people come up to me and be like, oh, I think you were my nurse when I had my baby. And I'm like, that's pretty crazy. Pretty cool that people remember you like that.
Yeah, well, you're there. You're one of the most pivotal. You play a very pivotal role in probably their best day of their life up to that point. And if they've had other kids, it's equal to that. But for a person who is their first kid, you played a pivotal role in their most important day of their life.
Yeah, it's super, super rewarding. Okay, I don't have much complaints about this job. I think I'm super lucky to have it, and I would encourage anyone who's trying to be a nurse to explore lots of different areas of nursing until you find your, niche? Until you find your niche, and roll with it, because it's super rewarding and a great job.
When did you decide that you wanted to be on the labor and delivery side of nursing?
Probably. So our senior year of college, we had to pick a capstone, which is basically an unpaid internship that you go to like I forget how many hours, but something like twice a week or something like that for your last semester of college. And I didn't even really have a reason why I wanted to do labor and delivery. I just was like, wow, that sounds fun. Actually, I think part of it was because my mom worked in a neonatal intensive care unit for a lot of years. So I grew up like watching her um, take care of families and infants and running into those families at the grocery store or at like school conferences. And I always thought that was super cool. So I think that's where my interest started in it. And then I just did that capstone in OB, and it was everything about it felt right. So I was like, oh, I got to get into this. This has got to be my career. So then once you graduate college and have to find a job and you can't get one in OB because it's super rare for anyone to graduate and get a job straight into the specialty they're looking to go into for the rest of their career. You usually have to go work a med surge unit, which there's nothing wrong with working med surge. I just don't have the passion or the desire to do that, and I kind of knew I wanted to do something different, so I put in my 9 months in med surge and then switched over to OB and learned everything I know now, and it's been perfect.
Awesome. Do they do anything to like help you try to pick what part of nursing to go that you want a career in when you're in college?
Not
Or is it
really.
all
Like
just how to prep you for boards?
they prep you for boards, but you definitely get like a clinical rotation in all the different specialties. So I had a clinical rotation in Duluth and in their labor and delivery unit, but I remember like they didn't even have a baby, or I don't even think they had a patient that day. So that doesn't tell you anything about like if you're gonna like it or not.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people get stuck in fields that they don't really want to be in just because they haven't experienced something else, and it's hard once you get super familiar with your job. Like you're like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing in my med surge job. It's really hard to want to switch to something different because you feel super vulnerable. Really, like you have no idea what you're doing whenever you switch to a new field, just because it takes 6 months, a year to feel like comfortable in the new area that you decide to go to.
Mm-hmm. I think that extends beyond nursing
For sure.
in that um, nobody is, unless you're in like a trade school, because that's like directly to a job, nobody's really like helping you to decide what kind of job to do with your degree or what, you know, kind of thing interests you. It's just like you have to learn all this stuff, whether it's for boards or to go to grad school or just like pass these tests, but it's never like, how do I figure out what I like to do or what I want to do for my job, which is, what do I say to you? It's like 70% of your life
You're working.
You're working. Yeah. So what do I want to do for 70% of my life within this field that I've picked in your major, whether that's marketing or nursing, because there's still so much within those fields, and there isn't really a super good way to just try things out. You know, yeah. Internships are great, but you kind of, I mean, they're for a summer or a few months or a semester or something. But if you get into one that you don't like, you can't really jump around. You can't really just be like, oh, I'm going to try this for a week, that for a week, and see maybe, something will pop up at you maybe that you didn't think would be enjoyable, but you can try that thing because it's you're not going for like a long-term.
I mean, I remember like starting my job in med surge at a little hospital in Coon Rapids, Minnesota, and I had worked there for like 3 months, and I was like, shit, is this really what I signed up to do for the rest of my life? Because that's like miserable. Like, I like taking care of people. It just wasn't I didn't have any interest in it. So like, I loved my patients, but I didn't love the field that I was working in. Mm-hmm. So I was like super freaked out. I was like Googling like what to do when you don't like your job and you're a nurse. Like, I had no idea what I was going to do because I could not.
You and your sister did that too.
I know, it's so bad. But I was like, I had applied to like my 20th OB job and still hadn't gotten it. And then finally, United Hospital took a chance on a young girl from Andover, Minnesota.
They they didn't take a chance. Taylor is an extremely good nurse, but the way that most nursing is, and certainly that in OB, it seems like none of them have um, very high confidence in their abilities because there's always the potential for really bad stuff to happen.
I mean, I think we're confident, but we don't show it because we know that the second we show it, shit's gonna hit the fan and all hell's gonna break loose. So we try to tone it down a bit and just always be aware that you don't know what's gonna happen with your patients and anything terrible can happen at any moment in time, and you need to be prepared and ready to deal with it. Like, if you get cocky and you get too confident, I don't know if this is the truth, but I know the majority of people I work with feel like this, then that's when you start not like performing well at your job.
Turns out nurses are actually the most superstitious
Yeah,
people in the world.
it's bad,
Not
guys.
not athletes, not I don't know, like a stockbroker or something.
Speaking of, there was a full moon about a week ago.
And what does that mean
Oh,
for nursing?
It means chaos.
Chaos. I
Absolute
mean, the
chaos.
wolves are running in the woods, and the babies are not behaving.
They're popping out everywhere. Yeah, it's rough.
Speaking of wolves, for those just listening, Bridger here is sitting right to my right. We're just on our couch here at home, and then Maverick was just sitting on Taylor's lap, but has now decided to lay on the floor. But these guys are
really naughty.
They're kind of naughty sometimes. They kind of ran away a little bit today when I was just here working at the house. And then I started driving in our neighborhood to try to find them, and then I just drive back past our house, and they were at the front door waiting for me. So who knows where they went, but they were really breathing heavily when they came back, so that means they probably were chasing a deer.
They're super tired tonight, so they were up to no good this
Yeah.
morning. Naughty boys.
But these guys are pretty much our life. Most of the stuff we do is to like get them out on adventures or to take care of them, and we do stuff on our own too. But I don't want to say it's like having a kid because that's totally different. That's a whole other
furry
human
kid that you can put in a kennel
But it's
and
just-
leave at home on its own.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a new human. It's not. The Bridger doesn't have the potential to like cure cancer or be the next Hitler.
I don't know.
But it is something to learn how to take care of, and
it does
makes
a lot.
it teaches you to be responsible.
It does a lot for like your relationship with another person too, because like there will be times where I'm like, don't let the dogs do this or don't let the dogs do that, and it's like you have to figure out like almost sounds really dumb, but like your parenting style kind of with a dog, but
Your
it's
dog
like
ownership style.
it's super good skills to learn and like compromise, whatever. I don't know. I feel like it's been really good for our relationship to have them and parent them.
Yeah, and having them, or when I got Bridger, we weren't together, but it kind of drove us together to just like get them out on walks and do stuff with the dogs, just to get the dogs together and to get the dogs out. And then we were already friends before that, but they definitely pushed us more together. And
And now they're brothers.
Yeah, they immediately loved each other, and they would like snuggle sitting in the yard together, like spooning basically.
So cute.
And now they're basically just one unit. And since I work from home and kind of and I work during the day, I'm with them basically 24/7. So Maverick is just kind of like my dog, and Bridger is basically just your dog also.
Yeah, we
There's not really a division of like
who's
mine and hers.
other than Maverick. My shadow.
Maverick is the biggest mama's boy I've ever seen.
Like, I can't pee without him in the bathroom with me. It's so cute, but like also, what are you doing, dog?
Yeah, so Taylor works nights, so Maverick will sleep in the bed with me at night while Taylor's working, and then I get up with the boys, and like they go to the bathroom and have breakfast. And
Breakfast.
Taylor gets home, and then she goes to bed, and then he will like beeline it into the bed to sleep with her all day.
Like
and
until
I have to, like,
3 p.m.,
yeah,
4 p.m.
I have to like drag him out of there to make him go to the bathroom or do anything, or like if I'm gonna go on a hike or something. He like, yeah, I just have to like, drag him out of there. He wants to be around her all the time, and if she goes on errands, he'll like walk up to the door and just want to go do errands with her, even though it's just
Like
he's
I'm
just
going
in the
to
car.
the post office and grocery shopping, and
Yeah, he can't even come in.
He's
He
so
just
excited to come with.
yeah, he's such a mama's boy.
He's real special.
Yeah. Tell the listeners about how we got together.
Oh man. Whoa. You guys have time for this?
So Taylor and I, we met freshman year of college, and I'll tell this to anybody who wants to listen to it. I tried to date her when I first met her, but she
like
was
age
too
19.
She was too cool for me,
No.
and so then we're still friends, but we dated other people, and then after we graduated college and whatever, we were just we both became single around a similar time, and were like hanging out with the dogs and stuff, and then there was one fateful weekend
where Tyler invited himself to my family's cabin. Mark my words.
No,
He was not invited.
No.
Yep.
I was texting with Taylor Rosemark and your sister Allie, and I think it was Allie who sent me the address and said, "Yeah, come up here." And then Taylor was saying to come up there also, and I was actually in St. Cloud for my grandma's birthday, and I drove
5 hours.
I drove from St. Cloud to Grand Rapids, and I don't know how long it was.
Like
A long ass time. All because of I knew that I wanted to try to date you, and I knew the potential that it had just from knowing you as a friend. So I knew I had to make it happen.
He was the only one that knew this.
Well, I'm a man who does what it takes to get what he wants.
It's true.
And I want to date you. And I knew if it didn't work out, it would ruin our friendship, probably. But I knew that it would work out. Well, so far it has. And that it'd be worth it.
So here we are, 2.5 years later, doing a podcast in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah. If you had told, what year was that? 2017, Tyler, that in 2.5 years, you would be living with Taylor Weiss and dating her, and you'd be living in Jackson Hole, and I already had a dog at that point, and you both have your dogs, and you started your own marketing company.
Oh, right.
I would not have believed you. I would have lost my mind. That would have been incredible if someone had told me that.
Pretty cool.
It's kind of the dream.
Yeah, we're living the dream right now.
And you too. You get to, the differences between an urban hospital and a rural hospital are significant. But you got to do night shift. You got to do 12-hour shifts, and you got to be in labor and delivery.
Shout out to all my night shifters out there.
Yeah.
It's a tough life we're living, but
yeah,
we're doing it.
It is. So it's super tough on the people doing it. And I'm not saying my struggle is more, but it's something that I had to adjust to in learning how to, date and care for someone who's A, in the medical field, and B, works nights. Because all of my family members are like in
5.
business. Yeah, are like my dad and my stepmom are in sales. My mom works in downtown Minneapolis, just in a business, just 9 to 5, normal stuff.
And not to like lessen that at all, but it is like
no, to lessen that.
Well, no, it's just a significant. Like
It's
when we
not-
started dating, I was working day nights, so at least
Yeah.
like we were getting to have dinner together, or I don't know, anything that regular people do on in the evenings, we'd still get to do that because I'd get home from work at 8 p.m. and then go to work at 7 a.m. But I switched to full-time nights probably, 3 months after we started dating?
Yeah.
And that was like something I had thought about for a while. Like I always knew I wanted to do it, but I was questioning it once we started dating because I was like, how is this going to affect our relationship to only see each other for a few hours a day? I don't know. I pondered it for a little bit, but when we worked in Minnesota, or when we lived in Minnesota, the pay was a lot better to work nights. You usually got your days all scheduled in a row, so you could have more days off. And it just was a better gig for me at the time. And then I kind of grew to love nights, and it sometimes sucks because you miss out on stuff and you sleep during the day, but it's a lot easier in the winter because it's dark out. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Summer I have a hard time because I just want to be awake during the day. Winter, it's dark at like 4 or 5 p.m., so I can easily like.
And there's not as much.
You don't feel like you're missing out on as much.
Yeah, there's like, even though like you would go to work at like 6:30, there's still like 3 hours that I'm doing stuff after she leaves.
Or like just
that
when
she feels
he
like
goes
she's missing out
and
on.
has happy hour with his friends or anything like that. That you're like, oh, if I only work till 7:30 or 8 p.m., I could go do that, but you can't really do that when you work nights because you can't drink and go to work. But but it's an adjustment, but I love it.
And my struggle was figuring out how to prioritize the slim time that we have together when you're in the stretches that you're working, because like figuring out my daily schedule of like, okay, I'll work during the day and then maybe I want to do a hike or a bike ride or golf or something, but I want to be home for the time that between you get up and when you leave, so that we can either just like be awake in the same room together just to be around each other or to make dinner or whatever. And so like I didn't quite get that at first because I had never been a part of that.
You gotta work like really hard to carve out the time, otherwise you won't like. A lot of times here now I work like 5 on, 6 off or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful, but it's like you don't even see each other for 5 days, really.
Yeah, there's sometimes when it just doesn't work out that I'm not around during the time that you're up or whatever, and
but hey,
we just like
probably works out best for us.
Yeah, I never have to worry about needing alone time. Maybe in these Taylor's off for the next 8 days.
Oh boy!
And they'll probably be the longest. One of our vacations.
Yeah.
One of the longest stretches of
time together
every single day since you started going nights.
We'll see if this relationship is still together. We'll report back in 8 days.
Yeah, but I never have to worry about like needing alone time because I can get that 3 days a week.
5
days.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, whatever it is.
Works out pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. So, if we could go into mountain.
Bridger, just so you guys can't see this, but Bridger is sleeping next to us right now, and his little cute paws are like running next to each other, like when
like
dogs
toes,
run in their sleep.
The camera's going.
Oh, but
his little toes do this. They just like twitch when he's sleeping.
It's so cute. Okay, moving
on. To go back into kind of the mountain stuff, mountain town stuff. What was your first impression of Jackson when I first brought you here? We came here
summer
in like August of the first, like maybe 4 months after we started dating. We drove out from Minnesota, loaded up her Nissan Rogue with the dogs and a topper thing, and we
Yeti,
got some Airbnb and camped and stuff. So what was your first impression of this whole valley and just like real mountains? You've been to
nowhere.
Denver?
I mean, like I've been to Denver, but we never really I went to Denver for my little sister's volleyball tournament. It wasn't, and we did a few things, and I don't know, been a couple places, but man, when you come here, it's like I always say, you're just like walking along, biking along, driving along, and all of a sudden, bam, the Tetons like hit you in the face. They're so big,
Yeah.
so magnificent. Like you're just, I don't know, you're just like on your drive, and all of a sudden they're just right in front of you, and they're huge and beautiful. And I had never really experienced that before. And coming to a little mountain town in the summer, I was like, what the heck are we gonna do here in the summer? I thought it was just like for skiing and
Yeah, there's way
whatever
more
else.
to do in the summer.
But highly recommend going.
Don't come here because it's already too busy.
No, we're
Go to Vail or go to
Go to any
Park
mountain
City.
town in the summer because there is so much to do. Like all the hikes are so awesome. Like we hiked up to a lake in freaking what was it? The end of June with some of our friends. The lake at the top was still frozen, and it was snowing when we got to the top. Like, where can you say that you could ever?
And we were wearing shorts
that?
too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was cold in the valley. It was like warm.
Yeah, I mean, it was like 60 degrees when we started at the bottom, and by the time we got to the top, it was probably like 30, snowing, windy. I don't know. You can't really experience that a lot of places, and it's pretty sweet. Our first time out here, we went camping at.
Don't tell them the spot.
We won't tell you the spot. And
there's a place
tag responsibly.
out.
Keep Jackson Hole
Tag
alive.
responsibly. Keep Jackson Hole wild. There's a campsite. If you know me close enough, know us close enough, text us and we'll tell you. But we're not going to say it over the podcast. There's a campground area out in the Grovant Wilderness. That's as much as I'll tell you, but it's right along this creek, this river, with these enormous mountains and like red rock hills all around you. And
it's something that you can't even like make up or like Google in a picture to see like Red Rocks, the Tetons, any mountain range.
You can see
a river, a bright blue river.
It's almost like, remember those geographic graphics that showed you the different types of geological features, you know, in textbooks and like middle school textbooks, where it showed like mountain, river, ocean. It's like that, but in real life, because you go to this one spot, like, you know, up where you can see everything.
Mm-hmm.
In one location, just looking one direction, you can see the Grand Teton and the big three peaks of the Tetons. You can see red rock formations, so something you might picture in like Utah or Arizona. You can see this is probably the coolest ranch in the world. It's like this big green pastures with horses and stuff, and a big like ranch house and like the buck rail fences. And
like a teal river. Like I have real feels for a river that's like bright blue.
Yeah.
Which you don't, I mean, like a lot of places, especially in the Midwest, they're like a brown color. You don't really see the like turquoise blue rivers. So that was like so crazy to me to see that on top of all the other things you're already seeing. But that kind of is one of the things that we first came here and I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And then what else did we do when we were here? Oh, we went like paragliding? Did we do that?
Yeah. Well, we spent time around the resort, the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, and our oldest friend here, Fred Harness, is a paragliding pilot, a tandem paragliding pilot. So there's a group that does it from the resort, and he does it through them part time and takes people up. But he's taken me up like 5 times now, and it just worked out where he was able to get us both in like consecutive runs, and he loves doing it, so he was super happy too. So what do you think of that?
Insane. Do it. Like
walk them through
okay.
Like the setup for taking off.
So you ride the tram up to the top of the mountain at what, 10,400?
10,450.
10,450 vertical feet. And you walk off the tram and it's like 20 degrees out because it's the morning, even when it's the summer, it's so cold. And you walk out with your instructor and you watch everybody else go, and they're like, okay, you're just going to run off the back of this mountain into the air and don't stop running until they tell you to stop. So you're like running man in the air feet still running.
Yeah.
And you were in the air, like it's super silly looking. But Fred is like, shout out to Fred. We love Fred, but Fred is like probably like a few inches shorter and probably like 20 less pounds than I am. He's in great shape. But I was like, how is this man gonna hold me in the air? Like I was so confused on the like how this was gonna work out. And we did it, and we were running. All of a sudden, we're in the air, and then next thing you knew, Freddie's doing like toilet bowl swirls, and we're like 20 feet off the top of like a rope climbing thing where. Oh, it was scary. He's like, oh gosh, the wind's not picking up. We're not quite getting high enough.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to die out here. But no, it was freaking sweet. And I would do it again. It's just that it's like $300 or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But
it has
everybody,
to be,
do it once and experience it.
Yeah.
Any like valley, mountain town, anything that you go to, wherever, Colorado, Utah, whatever it is.
You can't do it everywhere.
Well, wherever they offer it, do it because it's sweet.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that you can do it here and you can't do it everywhere is because the Tetons have so much exposed granite and like this dark rock. When the sun hits the sun hits the rocks and sends these kind of pillars or shoots of hot air up into the sky. And so you fly out over those and you catch those drafts and you circle up really high. And it's the same thing that birds do out here, like hawks and eagles. They hit these same drafts and go up really high. And not everywhere you can do that because there's not the exposed granite like there is here. Like you can do it, I think like in Switzerland people do it the same way. And then you can do what they call speed flying. Like I've seen people do it near Park City, but that's like not as high. They take a smaller sail and they just kind of run off of a cliff and it keeps them up in the air, but they don't go like when you do this paragliding, you can go
you're like soaring
way above the peak of the resort. Yeah.
So that was our first trip to Jackson. I mean, I'm sure we did a lot of other things. We did a lot of hikes. Hi, Bridger. And then we came back in. Oh, there we go. We came back and we didn't plan this, but we decided it would be fun to go to Park City in like January or February of a couple years ago. Well, it just so happened to be like the one year that they didn't have any snow. Like
the worst winter in the last 50 years in Utah was the one that we went to Utah.
And we drove out there from Minnesota, stayed at this beautiful little cabin on a creek. It was like a studio log cabin. I don't know. It was amazing.
Guest house to this big mansion.
Yeah. And like 20 minutes outside of the resort there. Yeah. So we were super pumped about it. And then we go to the resort the first day. And I'm like, oh, this place is so cool. We like ride the lift up to the top, start coming down. You're freaking like, I had just started skiing. I'm not a skier. I'm a try-to-skier. But trying to ski there with my brand new skis that I was very protective of, they were just like clashing over rocks because snow was not covering the ground, running into boulders, just like not what I anticipated at all. And eventually we were just, after like 2 days of it, we skied there and we were like, this sucks. This is not fun at all. Like the most fun part was probably going to that distillery. What was it?
Yeah, Still West.
No, it wasn't still anything.
West.
It was a whiskey place. Whatever. The park. If you ever get to go to Park City's pretty sweet. Probably even sweeter if they have snow. But the cool part about their resort is that you can ride you can ski or snowboard all the way down to the bottom. Take your skis off and like walk to a bar. High West. That's what it's called. That's a brand of whiskey, right?
Yeah. So in Park City, they have a lift that comes right out of like what they might call downtown Park City, where all the fun bars are, and you can ski and ride right down to the door of this distillery.
That was probably our favorite part. The rest of it was absolutely terrible. Tyler took me on a little adventure through the trees, where I literally was like doing the splits between a tree a few times. Skis flying off, poles 20 feet
Yeah.
away from me. It was a
There was
disaster.
there was so little to do because for the listeners from Minnesota, Afton Alps had a bigger snowpack, which means what snow was on the ground at that moment,
So like
than
picture
Park
any
City. And
non-mountain
so,
city, like what? Any if you live in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, anything in the Midwest and you're skiing there, it's all right. But and then you go to a mountain and you're expecting it to be like huge. It was so dumpy that year.
it's big.
It's big, but
The
like
resort
there
is
was no
big, but there
snow.
just wasn't. There was so little to do. Like any of the hard stuff that I would have fun doing wasn't even open because that would have more rocks and it wasn't even covered.
So third day, we were like,
So yeah, then we
let's
were
go to
texting.
Jackson.
We're looking at like the apps, the weather apps, and seeing that Jackson's getting snow like it often does here. Texted Fred and said, "Hey, is it? How's the snow up there? We're in Park City. We're thinking of coming up there because the snow's really bad here." And we do.
And it's dumping in Jackson. We're
Yeah.
driving. We drove, what is it, like 5 hours? No, 4 hours. It's not even far. Like, the only reason we were, like, kind of hesitant to come here was because we had already paid for our Airbnb. And then
Yeah.
we would have to find a place to stay here. And we weren't going to get refunded for anything in Park City. So we were like, well, let's just do it. Let's go. It was, like, Valentine's Day weekend, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is our Valentine's treat. And we drove to Jackson, and we're, like, 2 miles from the resort, and we get pulled over and it's dumping snow, and we're just like so pumped to get there. And the officer was like, can you tell me why you're speeding? And Tyler, what'd you say?
You tell him.
I can't remember it.
I said I was speeding to get to the powder.
You're like, sorry sir, I just can't wait to get to the powder. There's no snow in Park City. And he let us off with a warning. He's like, yep, go out there, have fun. It was great. That was my first time skiing here, doing tram laps. It was crazy. Like, I'm not a good skier. I just enjoy the snow. But
What was your first
insane.
impression of skiing here?
I mean, I was
you saw the mountain on the tram in the summer, and then to see it transform into what it is
I
in the
just
winter.
like in my head couldn't understand how you can ski that. Like in the summer, I was like, it doesn't make any sense. It's cliffs and it's whatever, and then you get here in the winter and everything's covered, and you ride the tram to the top, and Tyler's like, read this sign. What does it say? It's like backcountry.
This mountain is like nothing you've ever skied before. There's expert terrain off
Like
off
blah
the top
blah
of the
blah.
tram.
You could die.
Yeah, there's cliffs inbounds, so please follow all closed and cliff signs. If you do go out of the gates, have a beacon,
Blah
have
blah
a
blah.
probe, and know
Okay,
what
that's
you're
what
doing.
it says. So we're like waiting to go up the tram, and I've skied probably 6 times prior to this. And I'm like, I am not cut out for this at all. We get to the top, and I mean, shit, you've got no choice. If you start like skiing like 10 feet, you're going. Like, you don't get to like take your skis off and walk back to the tram. You're committed at that point. And at that time of the year, like, you didn't have to be that, like, you didn't have to have a lot of skill to get down it. It was powder when we were there, and I don't know, I felt that it wasn't difficult to get down it. It was just like amazing to like rip through the snow like that.
Yeah, there's a
And
lot
not
of
be
powder that
slipping
day,
on ice.
and that makes it less scary because you're never really going that fast when it's a powder day, but you get that joy of feeling the powder.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet.
So I took her down the top of the tram. You have to go down Rendezvous Bowl, which is a black diamond. It's this big, wide open bowl. It is pretty steep, definitely a black diamond steepness, but it's really wide. You can just kind of inch your way down if you're not sure. And that's always got amazing powder on powder days because it's the top of the mountain, and the snow it faces kind of east southeast. So the snow, most of the storms come from the west in Jackson, and they come up over the Rendezvous Mountain, and then they blow all that snow into Rendezvous Bowl, and so it's just packed it, and not packed in there, just stuffed in there. And yeah, then we took it down a little bit farther, and there's this little line of cliffs that I know how to get through without having to do any sort of drops, and we were getting our way through there, and Taylor did a great job, even though, like, if you look at, then I showed it to her in the summer the next time we were there, and it's just like straight cliffs that you skied through. But because of the amount of snow. You don't need to. It's not very steep. It's not very long. There's not like a jump or anything where, for someone like Taylor, can get down it just fine.
We don't know about that anymore. We'll see how this winter goes. That little incident last December.
Yeah, tell them about that.
Oh gosh. I don't know. Do I want to? So we went skiing at Spirit Mountain in Duluth, Minnesota, which was so fun until like an hour and a half into being there when I thought I was the shit and I was ripping down some rolling hills and took a huge digger and dislocated my hip and broke my arm. So this is an ongoing recovery. We will see how this winter goes in Jackson. I'm not confident in my abilities anymore, but I'm gonna try. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. You've done a lot though in re-strengthening, and like we do a lot of hikes and she does a lot of biking, so you've given it a really great effort to get back to a place you can just still do
If
the
I
kind of
can't
skiing you
get
want
back
to do.
to it after this, it's probably a matter of like reconstructing what I messed up, because I feel like the only thing more I could be doing is like some sort of like, I don't know, lunging, jumping, whatever those activities are. A lot of the stuff we do here, I like try to get myself on different like round and turns, and I don't know, just stuff that like strengthens the mobility of the hip. And if it doesn't work out this winter, it's probably not going to work out, and we'll just have to do something to fix it. But we'll see how it goes.
I think it'll work out. To that quarterback for Alabama, so he dislocated his hip. He had to get surgery for it, but that's because they need him to be back for next football season, because he'll get drafted and stuff. But
yeah, they don't need me that much.
yeah, it's interesting how like doctors react differently if you're like an athlete, a college athlete, high school athlete, versus if you're just like someone who just has a job. Like they were like, we're not really gonna do anything. Like it's back in. Like after they put it back in, they were like, oh, we're not really gonna do anything because you're a nurse, so you don't like need this ASAP.
No, I just needed 4 weeks off of work with no pay. But yeah. But no, I get what you're saying. I had a super great doctor in Duluth, Dr. Hank. Shout out to Dr. Hank, who's been my doctor for 2 different occurrences in Duluth. But he's